Excuse me. Today I have with me Georgia Lininger. Georgia Lininger is the founder and editor-in-chief of Salus Publishing, a book publishing house focused on publishing high-quality books for diverse authors and illustrators as well, in a variety of genres, as sustainably as possible. So Georgia is about sustainability as well, very much so. Shipping, promotional materials, printed materials, everything is on 100% recycled or tree-free papers. Good. I love my trees. I don't want my trees cut down for paper. She lives with her family on a small farm in Northern California. We're just talking about that. So if you hear her chickens or my chickens, you kind of realize that we're both out on a farm here. That's good. So Georgia, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to start your company, and what are the main services that it offers?
So I started my book publishing company way back in 2019. I thought that would be a great time to launch a book publishing company for children's books, doing school presentations and all that stuff. And then of course lockdown happened. So it's, I've gotten much more versatile on the internet and, as, we pivot as life goes. Um, I have loved writing since I was in school. And so I studied English literature at university and actually got my master's degree at the University of Oregon in journalism. And so my master's thesis was actually on the history of paper in both books,
Wow.
newspapers, and magazines. And the more I learned about paper and and how these three industries have been using paper for centuries now, it's very inefficient. I think there have been a lot of mistakes that have been made over the years, and it was choices that were made in what they thought was the best interest at the time, and then over time they just didn't see the environmental impact of it. And now we do, and so now it's time to make some changes. So for example, trees as a form of paper. Trees are a terrible form of paper. Their fiber is far too strong. Tree fiber needs far too many chemicals like chlorine and acids to break those fibers down and to make them into that lovely pulp where you can flatten it out and dye it, like chlorine makes that bright white and all that stuff. But then, of course, as soon as you use those chemicals, they can't be used again. So where do they go? Down the river.
You're right.
And so you have a lot of, kind of tree companies that have really had a huge environmental impact. So for my company, I had published my first children's book with a traditional publisher, and I was so excited about it. And I said, "Hey, what about recycled paper?" And they said, funny, nope. And I was like, "What about this?" Or what about? And they said, "We already have our contract in place. We have our printer. We're set." So, okay. Second book came around and I thought, okay, another way to be more environmentally conscious is to do what's called print on demand. It's when you only print the books that people buy. And so there's much less waste that way, because that's another aspect, especially of newspaper, magazine, and books. It's not just how they're made, but what you do with them when you're done with them. And so I did print on demand for the second one, yet again, trying to think, hey, recycle paper. And that was not an option. So third time around, I had met other authors and their books, their stories were phenomenal. And I really thought they should get out there and get put unpublished. And I wanted to publish my book called The Trees on paper that did not involve the killing of trees. And so I started my company.
That is awesome. So what, you always were sustainable? You always liked not in fact affecting the environment from day one?
Well, I mean, I think kind of like what we just talked about as far as, kind of living on a farm, when you are kind of when you grow up in kind of I don't know, the farm environment, or you're kind of surrounded by nature, I think that had a huge impact on me growing up. And one of my all-time favorite books is The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter, and I always mispronounce his name, but it's called The Hidden Life of Trees, and it's just a phenomenal book. But anyway, so I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten kind of more and more sustainable and more interested in the various ways we can be more and more sustainable, less garbage. I mean, having chickens is phenomenal. Think of all of your food waste. Like, they love it, and that helps to create our eggs. And so, it's just, I think there's so many little things we can do that can help. And they're fun along the way. And so my company and creating it has been a huge joy for me. So
And for those of you who know me, I'm the same way as with Georgia. None of our food goes to waste. Maybe occasionally we've got a few cans or something like that. Not very often on those. So yeah, with the animals that you have, with everything that you use, it can go into a big compost pile, be fed to the critters. And I love my trees, and I don't want my trees used for paper. So we're with her on that one. Uh, so how you're talking about the publishing companies, and they're all
yes.
using the trees. So how does an author go about making sure that they get a hold of somebody that does the sustainable thing?
I think great question. I think it's a matter of kind of the research you put in, right? And so many authors, I think one of the biggest things about being an author is when you write that story, and it's such a process to write it. So by the time you've got it written, by the time you're satisfied with it, you've gotten up the courage to show your friends and family and like, what do you think? And they say, yay. And then maybe you've even built up the courage to show it to an editor or, copyright editor or stuff like that. Authors, it's like once you've got it down, you think you're done. And and I'm sure we'll speak to this later, but I think for authors, it's really that's just the beginning, unfortunately, because now the traditional route would be you go find an agent now. And so your agent would be then the one who would have the in, who would know the right people to go to the various publishers who publish the genres which you've written in, and then, to get the deals, and there you go. I think, especially for new authors, it's you're so excited about getting your book published, you don't think to ask, you don't think to push. And, because it's just, oh my gosh, what if I ask too much and they think, oh, I'm a prima donna and that's it. They like, you know what, never mind, we don't need to publish it. Right. And so I think honestly, with my first book, what was hugely influential on me was my illustrator. Her name is Jo Gershman, and she had illustrated, excuse me, I think about 40 children's books before mine. And
Oh,
so yeah, and so it's just I loved her art, I loved her style, I loved all of it. And she knew how to work with a publisher so that when we got the proofs back, she was like, oh, we need a correction on this page. Oh, this shade of yellow, we really need to bring that out. So you need to increase that by this. This, we need this, we need this, we need this. And here as the author, I'm looking at it as I just see the proof of my book. Woohoo! All done. And she was the one to kind of teach me, like, no, you can fight for what you want. You can push. And so that was huge. And I think a lot of authors, I think that's a valuable lesson to learn. So as far as for authors, who want to publish more sustainably, that is a conversation. If they already have a publisher, then they can push for that. And publishers need to start responding to those questions. Or if they don't have a publisher yet, they can come see me. Or, like I said, print on demand. Print on demand is a wonderful way to do it. There's so much less waste involved. So there's multiple ways.
very true. So you do publishing. Do you help them write their book at all, or you're strictly working with the publishing part and getting it out there?
Oh yeah. I mean, we edit, we copy edit, we copy, all of we are a traditional publisher. We do it all. So for example, one of my latest authors is a man named Sai Swan. Sai Swan is 87 years old, and yes, I know, and this is his first book. And
Cool.
so Sai, yes, he is a blacksmith. He has a ranch up in Oregon. And so he has his own forge, and he's got his anvils, and he makes all sorts of incredible stuff. And I learned about him through the YouTube channel Essential Craftsman. And so it's kind of a building, channel where you can, how would you kind of build a house or build, a ramp for, wheelchair or whatever, all these sorts of things. And Sai's a frequent guest. And so he makes knives. And so my husband had seen these videos, loved these knives. And so I was kind of doing these subtle hint, hint, like my birthday's coming up and, hey. So I know. So I ended up calling and kind of tried to order a knife. And we just, Sai and I just started talking. And it was one of those, I mentioned I'm a book publisher. And he said, oh, well, about 40 years back, I wrote a story, but, my nobody seemed to like it. So I just put it in a drawer. And so it's like, oh, well, I mean, I'm happy to read it for you. I mean, if can't hurt. And he said, oh, well, okay. And so we sent it down and it was hilarious and it was wonderful and fantastic and I loved it. And so, yes, as part of a publisher, you do edit. And so Sai and I got to go a few rounds and it was all fun, but it was just, I'm suggesting, what if we change this line to this? What about this? And then, sometimes you'd kind of acquiesce and sometimes he'd push back and like, no, 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 this needs to be this. And so that's just part of the fun process. So yes, as a publisher, we edit. And like I said, I've got copy editors. We sometimes people do their own art if it's like an illustrated children's book or like our poetry book. We kind of wanted art included with the poetry. And so she loved a local artist. She loved his style and his design. And so we worked with him and kind of to coordinate art that would go along with her poems. So it's just every book we have done has had a different kind of story, different process to it. So yeah.
Awesome. That's a fantastic story. I love that. I'll have to check that out because yeah, as you know, sustainability, building our own stuff, we do build our own stuff quite often. And my wife would love a new knife. She loves knives. So that's cool. Do you see many of the other publishers going with sustainable non-tree paper at all?
Not yet, not that I have seen. I mean,
Okay.
you walk into a Barnes and Noble and and it just you might see the occasional journal that might be kind of written on like tree-free paper or something like that. But it's rare, honestly, these days. So yeah, it's because I think so many companies have their I'm so sorry, give me 1 second. I apologize. Okay, I apologize. I hear our livestock guardian dog barking, and when he does his big boy bark, I know something's up. Okay, so for no, I think a lot of publishers they have, especially most publishers now, as we've seen in a lot of different industries, there's been a lot of consolidation. So you have what's called the big five, which is now actually becoming the big four. And so it's these major corporations that have bought out the vast majority of large to mid-sized publishers. So they're all under the same house. And when they consolidate those paper contracts as well. And so with that in mind, then it's when someone wants to push back, then, to say, hey, what about, unless, they have that desire to go a different way than what they've always done, they're really not going to because it might, affect the bottom line. It might affect, current contracts, current working relationships, and why change it if it's not broke? But of course, then if these sustainable people like it is broke. So anyway, but yeah.
Very true. I agree on that. So if you want to be sustainable, you got to go see Georgia
Yep.
as your as your publisher on that. Definitely so. So you indicated you've written some books, children's books. That sounds very challenging to write a children's book. How do you write a children's book that kids will actually not only like, but they'll just love it and want it read over and over again?
That's a great question. I think I would refer to one of my authors, Andy Domick. He's written a series of books. It's the fairy tales ruined by cabbage. And so he takes traditional fairy tales and he inserts cabbage into it and it just mayhem ensues. And so I think with a lot of kids, in children's books, it's that sense of humor. It's that sense of, kind of just joy and frivolity and, ridiculosity. I think that's part of it. Andy's just, of course he is a father and, he, has a TikTok channel where he focuses on dad jokes and the dad puns and all that stuff.
Cool.
And, it's, that's fun for all ages.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's the humor, it's the joy. But then like with another of my authors, Marva Diaz, the illustrator that we worked with for that one, she actually contacted us. She contacted me. She was fresh out of university in the UK and she is deaf. And so she, communicates through British Sign Language, which I, of course, learned through that is different than American Sign Language, right? That they have some similarities, but many
Yeah.
differences, right? And so, and as she was doing the art for the book, she just had so many phenomenal suggestions about, for kids, kids with different abilities, people of all shapes and colors and sizes and just kind of various things. And so I think for children too, they pick up on the art so much and they pick up not just the story, but what they see, the visual aspect of it. And so I think there's just a lot of ways, it's just, yeah, through humor, heart, great characters, you know, yeah, I, children's literature it's a wonderful genre to be in.
How many books have you written so far?
I have written three. And so, yeah, three children's books. And
Cool.
then I've, yeah, of course, working on, novels and, working on other stuff, but, who knows when those will get finished. But because of course, in the last 5 years, I've been focusing more on publishing and the publishing aspect of it and working with other authors. Like we have published
Sure.
9 titles now, and it's just a joy to work with new authors and like I say, the illustrators, and it's been a lot of fun.
Is this what you do full time?
I am a teacher also, so because who needs sleep? So I am about to start my 19th year in education, and so I am a teacher. And so I think, as far as writing for children, I think it's a big, kind of help to work with kids and to kind of see, the jokes kids are saying, and what does still make them laugh and what does still make them feel good. What are their fears? What are their worries these days? And so that plays a huge part in it. I've taught high school, community college, K through 8, so it's yeah, you learn about it. You learn about kids as much as you teach kids as a teacher. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like it. I guess you that keeps you off the streets at night and out of trouble with all that things you have.
Exactly. I mean, who needs downtime? No, it's fun. It's good.
That's good. So you mentioned you work with as far as getting your book published. Are your clients just about anybody that wants to be sustainable and wants a book published? Do you have an ideal client?
So that's a great question. It's kind of been, through a variety of ways that I found my authors. It's sometimes I've met authors at conferences, I've met authors, like I say, buying a knife for my husband. I've met them through in bookstores, and like one is a co-owner of like our latest author for poetry. She's a co-owner of a bookstore where we sell our books. And so I think it's been kind of through a variety of ways that I found authors. As far as an ideal author, I think another thing that sets kind of our company apart is, and another thing that publishers do is whenever they publish a book, they've kind of, there's various terms for it, but they've already run the numbers of how many titles they think are going to sell. And especially if they think that are going to sell within the first 90 days or the first year. And if it, if it, if actual sales, go past their projections, fantastic, it's success. They'll build more, they'll make more books. They'll, kind of keep, promoting it. They'll keep pushing it, time and energy into it. And then if it doesn't, then frequently publishers, well, hey, it wasn't a success, on to the next. And so I think being a small and independent company, I choose authors that I love their stories, and I'm never going to give up on them. And I will promote them until the end of my days. And, it's whether sales were fantastic in the first 3 months or they picked up in the next year, or, it's a slow burn for for who, as long as they're in print, they will still stay in print. We don't do residuals, where that's another term that publishers use for basically they want to get rid of the books that didn't sell. I know we hold on to ours. And, I think it's just, I think I pick the stories that I love and the authors that I'm extremely proud to work with, because, yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. And then the ones that want to be sustainable on
Yeah,
that as well.
absolutely. Yeah.
So how did you manage to find uh, printers that would use recycled material?
Excellent question. So that was a hunt. So,
Ah,
and I think whenever you start a company and you kind of have that criteria in place, right? Like
mhm.
I knew that it's recycled paper or tree-free paper. Like that's just a given. And so initially it was contacting kind of larger printers and smaller printers and hey, what options do you have? And some had none.
Oh,
And and some had maybe a couple options, but the price point was so high because that's their niche market
ah,
that it wasn't viable. The first printer that we worked with that had actually a phenomenal selection of recycled paper was Hemlock Printers. They have an office in San Francisco, but their factory, their print, main print place is in Canada. And so Hemlock was amazing and just phenomenal to work with. And then a smaller printer that's on the East Coast is called Indigo Ink. And Indigo Ink has been fantastic to work with as well. And I think like with any industry, where there's a demand, more suppliers will find, the thing that they need to fulfill that demand. So
True.
I think with any kind of printer, more and more people ask, then the printers will realize, hey, there's a market here. Let's create more of this. And yeah, so there are options there, but in our experience so far, Hemlock and Indigo Ink have been fantastic. I
And you
love
had
working with them.
you had to go out there and research all this yourself and try and find who was doing
Yes.
that sort of thing.
Yes.
So there was somewhat of demand because these companies have already existed. So people were already thinking that let's use it.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, and especially, but for printers can print all sorts of things, right? They can print your brochures, they can
Right.
print your, I mean, even, like some, can do your wedding invitations or,
Mhm.
informational pamphlets. Like printers, they're so versatile these days that they can, print such a huge amount of, things and whatever you want. So when I say, hey, I want a children's book and I want it on, like kind of this weight, this size, this, all this, they have that versatility, which is great.
Excellent. A lot of great information, Georgia. Is there anything that I haven't asked yet that I should have?
Well, if people would like to reach out to our, kind of check out our books, we're on Amazon. And so we are in the process of revamping our website. And so that should be back up early September. And so where you can check out our authors pages and you can check out, their videos. We have a YouTube channel. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to kind of reach out. And yeah, so yeah.
Any website open right now that we can send people to? Or-
So it's saluspublishing.com. You'll see a little parked page right there. But we're also on Instagram and Facebook, so people can come and check us out there as well. Like say Andy Domick, he's got a phenomenal TikTok channel if you need to laugh at some, corny dad jokes. And
Oh,
he gardens and and all that fun stuff. Sai Swan, if you want to see an 80-year-old launch a bowling ball out of a cannon into his lake, then I highly recommend checking him out.
okay.
He is just a rock star. Um, and yeah, yeah,
That's awesome, Georgia. So if you're concerned with sustainability, which we all should be, Georgia and I grow our own food and things like that, and love our trees. I do as well. Go to Georgia to get your book published. She'll take care of you. We'll put that information out on with the video that I have here. But reach out to Georgia. I've written one book, co-written a couple others, and I have not looked into sustainability yet, and I should have. That's bad on me. I will get that done.
it's okay. It's all right. Thank
Georgia,
you so much for having me on.
thank you for your time today, Georgia. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.